So hello, everyone. This is week 2, if you're watching this later. So I'm just gonna go through all the props, or the props that we're gonna use today. So a big pillow, it doesn't have to be a yoga bolster, it can be, but it can just be like a bed pillow or couch cushion. You might want a yoga strap or a scarf or something nearby. Yoga blocks, if you use them, you don't have to have them, but if you use them, then great. Maybe you want a chair. You can use this to bring your hands to it at some point, or your knee, I'm too far away from this, your knee to it at some point. So there's lots of different uses for a chair. And then I also have this little pillow, just to use at the end when we lie down. Not needed if you don't want it, but personally I just enjoy having something under my head. So we're gonna start standing up. So find a nice place to stand. If this doesn't work for you, it doesn't feel good to be standing right off the bat, you can sit as well. You can sit on the edge of the chair, thinking about balancing across both of your feet. Wherever you are seated in the chair or standing up, maybe you want to close your eyes. If not, maybe you want to soften your gaze, or you could like pick like a point on your wall and sort of like look at that specific point. And start to notice your breath. Before changing your breath, notice maybe the qualities of it. Like, are they short breaths? Are they long breaths? Do they feel deep or like they're filling up your whole body? Or do they feel like a little bit shallow? There's no right and wrong. And notice when you think about your breath, are you starting to change it? So sometimes it's really hard to notice your breath without trying to change it. So we're just trying to figure out what is. Maybe thinking about your air expanding in your chest. Maybe thinking about your air being a specific color. Like I'm gonna imagine my breath is purple and the air in front of my face is purple. And I'm gonna inhale through my mouth or through my nose and imagine seeing that purple breath, or the colored breath. Come in, go down through your body, down all the way through your torso, down through your hips and down to your feet. I know that's not how breathing works, but sometimes it's a good visualization to imagine that color of stream of air going all the way through your body. Maybe thinking about how balanced you are here. Are you leaning more to one side than the other side? I'm leaning more into my left leg, I can tell. Are you on one side than the other? Are you leaning more forward than back? Just exploring sort of where you're at. Or do you notice if you're moving versus standing still? If you've been standing still, maybe you want to bring some movement into the body. Maybe moving the hips from side to side. If you're seated, maybe you want to bring your hands down your sides. You could put your weight in one foot versus the opposite foot. Maybe you want to explore leaning forward and then leaning back without lifting your toes or heels off the ground. For this, I have to open my eyes. Maybe you don't have to, but I feel like I do, because I feel like I'm gonna fall flat on my face. Maybe you want to lift your feet up, take a few steps and shake things out a little bit. And then come back to your stance. We'll bring one ear down to one shoulder. Notice if you feel a stretch along the side of your neck. And then bring your head back up to center. We'll do that same side stretch here down the shoulder on the opposite side. And then coming back to center. This time we're going to drop that ear down again, ear down to shoulder. And this time maybe you want to take your chin and tuck it in towards your chest. And notice if that changes where you feel the stretch on your neck. Taking a couple breaths here. You can also wiggle your hand, maybe turn your palm to face behind you and then forward. See if that makes a difference in the stretch that you feel. You could wiggle the fingers, flop your hand. Just noticing, maybe bring your hand a little bit up and down, see if that changes anything. And then let your hand drop again. And we're gonna slowly take your chin, bring it down towards the center of your chest. So now we're looking down. And notice if you feel a stretch along the back of your neck. And then we'll slowly rise up to the center. Option, if you want to tilt your head back, you could take your hand, place it behind your head for a little bit of extra support. And then look up straight in front. And then we'll go to the opposite side. So ear down to the shoulder again. And then that option to tuck the chin towards the chest. And notice if that stretch changes. And then that option to like lift up your arm and lower it. Or wiggle the fingers. Or turn your palm. And know that if it feels different on one side to the other, that's normal. That's fine. Just acknowledge it for what it is. And then we'll slowly bring that arm back down. We'll do the same thing. We'll take our chin, roll it towards the center of our neck, looking down, feeling that stretch again. Option to take the hand on the back of your head, just gentle pressure, not really pushing down, but just adding a little gentle pressure. And then slowly coming back up. An option to bring your head back again, holding with your back hand to support the head. I'm gonna be really careful we don't like fling our heads back. And then coming up, doing any movements here that feel good for you. Maybe you want to do some shoulder rolls. You could make them big. You could make them small. You could make them in the middle, whatever you want. Remember that whatever I offer is a suggestion. You can take it or leave it. If there's something that will be better for you, I urge you to take that. If you've done a few in one direction, maybe you want to go in the opposite direction. And then we can shake that out. We'll come to find our stable stance again. So remember from last time, that's the position where we feel like our weight can be balanced across both of our feet. We feel like pretty sturdy here. Option to take one hand, like I'm gonna go to my right side, slowly lower that down your right thigh. So we're hinging a little bit on our side. And then another option to bring that other arm in front, over top, or out to the side. Whatever works for your body. For a little bit of a side stretch. So maybe you feel a stretch in here. You can also leave your hand down. I still feel a pretty good stretch with my hands down, leaning down with this hand in the direction of the knee. It's definitely not coming to my knee, but in the direction of it. And then slowly coming back up. Bring your arm down, it was in the air. We'll do the same thing on the opposite side. So finding sturdiness, I notice I instantly start to sway. Lowering the hand down the side of your leg. And then option for the arm over in front of your head, above your head, up to the side, down by your side, whatever works for you. And you can have it different on both sides. and then lower, coming back to center, maybe wiggling things out a little bit. We'll find our stance again, this time raising our hands up so they're out in front, palms facing one another. And then an option to bring your hand, one hand back towards the back of your body and look to your back shoulder. Having your hands up like this doesn't work for you or doesn't feel great. You can also do this lower, that you still feel this twist in your back. Or you can have them down, one hand on your belly, one hand on your butt. That's a twist as well. Make sure you breathe. Maybe think about how it feels on your inhale. Do you feel any air going to that twisted part of your back? And then we'll bring our hands back to center. Let's shake them out. Wiggle around a little bit. And then find our stance again. And we'll do the same thing on the opposite side. So raising our arms up and bringing one back. And again, options to have them lower or have them down by your side. If you're in the chair, you can also hold the chair while you twist, or have your arms open, whatever works here. Breathing, again, noticing if you feel air going to that twisted area. And then we'll come back, slowly coming back to center. If you're standing, we'll do some hip circles. Maybe thinking about bringing your pelvis forward, tucking your butt under in the front, and then sticking it back in the back, tucking under in the front. If you're seated, we can do some torso circles. Seeing if you can do any sort of movement with your tailbone, thinking about pushing your tailbone out when you're in front and tucking it under when you're back, even while you're seated. So exploring that difference. And if you've done a bunch, it doesn't really matter to you in one direction. Make sure you also go in the opposite direction. You could add in arms if you want, or not. And then we'll shake that out. Coming back to our stance. Take a breath. Thinking about engaging your butt, engaging your core, and breathing. Thinking about if you're really stable here. And then maybe you want to join me in raising your arms up. So one at a time, inhaling up and exhaling down. You could inhale them partway up or a little bit or a lot. Whatever feels best for you. Remember, when I'm saying like whatever feels best for you, I'm really meaning whatever feels like doable for you, that you can sustain and breathe through. Like, it's not super easy, but it's also not painful, and it's not so challenging that you can't sort of sustain it and notice your breath. You know, when you're like doing a movement and all you can think about is ending it, that's not what we want. Maybe you want to alternate sides or switch sides. I was doing all one, but maybe you're doing alternating. Maybe you want to do both at the same time. I'm just going to make sure everyone's muted. Keep going. I just don't want anyone to show up on the recording if they don't want to. And here, maybe you want to add in something extra. So last time we did, I think we did a forward fold here, but maybe you want to add in a little bit of a squat this time. So inhaling the arms up, and this time as you exhale, the bending at the knees, doing like a little shallow squat. So we're not bending super far. We're just doing a little shallow squat. Maybe you have feelings about squats. Maybe you don't like them. You don't have to do them. You can also instead do a forward fold. So remember, that's hinging at the hips. So hinging forward. Bring your hands and head down towards the ground. Inhaling them up. And folding forward. This can also be done seated. You have your legs wider. Inhaling up. Exhaling. Folding between your legs. So again, you have choice. You have some options. You could just do your arms, or you could do your arms and a little squat, or you could do your arms and a forward fold. You could also just like hang out in your forward fold if that feels good for you. You could let your arms dangle. You could hold your opposite elbows. That sometimes changes what you feel in your back. So just explore there for a minute. Remember what we talked about last time in terms of options for forward folds. You can take lots of space. You can lift up your belly in the middle and then fold down. So that's always an option. Inhale, exhale, lift the belly and lower. And remember that our practices will all look different depending on what we want it to look like. So like what types of movement we want to do. And also if we link our breath, what type of, like what speed our breath is. Mine's getting faster. I don't know about yours, but I can feel my breath getting a little more rapid. So I'm getting a little more. All right, so if you're still doing circles or folds or squats, do a couple more. And then we'll come back to standing in the middle. We're going to come to the edges of our mat. So if you have a chair that you want to use to bring your hands to for any of our folds, you might want to have one. If you have blocks, you can also bring your hands to a table. You can also do this whole series seated. So your choice, how you want to be. If I'm going to move this to show the seated version actually. So actually do something else. I'm gonna grab an extra chair. There we go. So I tend to like to have my chair and my blocks at the end of my mat so that I can use either option, or I can hold on to the sides of the chair. So that's just that's like a preference I have, but your choice. We're going to start in our mountain pose, which is feet at a comfortable stance where you can be really sturdy. Remember, weight across all feet, engaging the butt, engaging the core, hands down by our side, and thinking about that tall spine. Like there's almost like a string pulling the top of your head up towards the ceiling, but not your chin. Your chin's parallel with the ground. Arms are down by our sides. Option to have those elbows facing forward, or if that's uncomfortable, we can keep them in by our sides. If you want to sit down, make sure your chair is in a stable spot. And then have your feet, again, the same as standing, So weight is balanced on the feet. I like to sit like on the edge of the chair so I can put a lot of pressure into the feet. You can have your hands down by your sides, elbows facing forward or in by the body, and that tall spine again. So that's our mountain pose. We'll take a breath in mountain pose. And maybe we want to raise our arms up towards the sky for our upward salute. And thinking about our shoulders, we could lower them. And this can also be done seated. And then we'll come into our forward fold. So if you don't want to move your belly, that's fine. We can bring our hands straight down into a forward fold, or we can bring our hands down through heart center to our sides, lifting up our belly, widening our stance, making space, and coming down, bring our head down towards the ground. So you can bring your hands to a chair, you can bring them to blocks, you can bring them to the ground, and take a breath here. You're seated, fold forward, leaning down again towards the ground. You could have blocks in front of you. You could have your hands on your legs. We're intending our head towards the ground in this fold. And then we'll slowly come up halfway. So we're going to look forward, imagining we have a flat back. So if you don't have this chair here, you could put your hands on your thighs. You could put your hands on your shins. You put them on the highest level of the block. So you're imagining your back is flat and you're looking forward in front of you. You're seated. You lift up. I have my hands on my thighs and looking forward. Taking a breath here in our half lift. And then we'll come back down from the half lift back into that forward fold again. So head towards the ground, leaning forward, taking a breath, and then we'll slowly bend the knees, raise ourselves back up, option to raise our arms up, and then bring our hands down through heart center and down to our sides. So that is our half sun salutation. We did that last time. And this time we're going to add on to it. So we'll add on a back bend and we'll add on a downward facing dog. So we'll show you some different options first. For our back bend, you can raise your arms up, lean them back behind your head for a little bit of a back bend. You can also raise your arms up, cactus them, bringing your shoulder blades back together, opening up the chest, and heading backwards. Neither of those options work. You can also think about bringing your shoulders back together, the shoulder blades back together, tilting your head back a little bit. So you can do back bend without using your arms. So choose that option that works for you. For downward facing dog, there's some options. If you have blocks or you want to put your hands on the ground, you can totally do that. So you would bring your hands to blocks and then step your feet back, hips up, butt up in the air, and you're looking through your front arms. So that's one version. It's not my favorite version, if I'm being honest. My favorite is using a chair. So that's why I always suggest people have chairs. You can also use a wall. Bring your hands to a chair and then stepping back, sticking your butt back and looking through your arms. I love this. It feels, for me, it feels so good in my upper back. You can also do this on a wall. So stepping back, bring your hands down a wall, looking through your arms. You can also do it seated. So I'll show you the seated option. And then we'll start over our sun salutation and add it in. So if you have blocks, you can put them out in front of you, sitting with your legs wide, and bring your hands to blocks, looking through your arms. Bring them in. So those are all the options. So when we come in that, when it comes time to do a downward facing dog, you can pick which one you like the best. You could also do the whole thing using a wall. Like you could do your forward folds touching the wall, and then come back for your downward facing dog. So there's lots of options in terms of props. Really, this is going to take like trying different versions out and seeing what works best. So grab some water if you want water. I'm terrible at not drinking enough, so maybe you want some. Let's stand or sit wherever we are, in front of a wall or in front of a chair, or seated in a chair. We'll find our mountain pose. So taking a couple breaths. Let's raise our arms up towards the sky. Option to come into that forward fold. So maybe you want to bring your hands down, lifting up the belly, making space before coming down. Pull your head down towards the ground. Breathing. And then we're going to come up half lift. So we're coming up to that flat back, looking forward. Taking a breath here. And from here, we're going to come into our down dog variation. So figure out which one works for you. That's why I like to have this chair automatically here, because I can just grab it. So you could put your hands on a wall. You could use the blocks or the ground. Stepping your feet back, sticking your butt and hips up in the air and looking through your arms. Maybe aiming to look back between your feet. And make sure you breathe here. And then from here, we're going to come back into our forward fold. So you can either walk your feet in, or I like to just sort of bring my hands back to my legs. The only challenge with that is that I don't have blocks or anything here. So if you don't have the mobility to touch the ground, then you can hold onto your legs. I notice that when I make enough space, like squishing my belly in, I really have a lot more mobility to touch the ground, where when my legs are too close, I definitely can't touch the ground. So notice if that makes a difference for you. And then we'll slowly bend the knees, raise our arms up, stand up. And here's where our option for a back bend comes in. So maybe you want to do this, hands behind your head a little bit, or cactus, or arms down, opening up the chest, tilting your head back. And taking a breath. And then we'll come back up. Your arms are up. You can bring them down to the center, down to your sides, taking a breath here. And then shake it out. So you might have noticed I have a tendency when I'm like, I'm done my back bend, I'm done. I'm just gonna like wiggle my way out. But let's try to be mindful and our sequence in a mindful way and finish in mountain pose where we started. So that's definitely something I need to work on, is being more like in the moment and present throughout the whole flow versus just trying to finish it quickly. So we'll take a breath. Let's do one more sort of standing movement before we come to sit down on the ground. So you can do this seated in a chair as well. We're going to work on tree pose. So there's lots of options. I'm gonna use a chair. Minimally, I like to use it, have it nearby to hold on to for support. You can also hold a wall or like any piece of furniture, because we're gonna be balancing on one foot. And sometimes, even if you think you might not need it, it's nice to have something just in case. If you want to stay seated throughout tree pose, I'll demonstrate that first. So we have some options. You can take a block or a stepping stool in front of you and place one foot up onto the step or onto the block, making that leg a little bit higher. And then you can either bring the sole of your foot to the block or to your opposite foot. Sitting on the edge helps you open up your knee a little bit. So this creates that triangle shape when you're seated. If we're standing, there's lots of different options. So you can use a block or not. So I'll leave the block here. But think about balancing across both feet and then lean into your right leg. Both my feet are still on the ground, but I'm leaning into the leg, my right leg, because it's the side, whatever I'm gonna hold. And then we have the option to come up onto our toes. So I bent my knee a little bit, and on my toes, my heels off the ground. From here, I can turn my foot so my knee sticks out and my heel of the left foot is touching like just above my ankle on the opposite leg. So this heel is, my left heel is touching my right leg. And you can see it's like a little bit of a bend triangular sort of shape here. I can hold on to something. I can bring my hands to heart center. I can raise them up towards the sky. I can wiggle them around. And this is one tree option. When I do this, I feel a lot going on in my standing leg. So there's definitely a lot of balance being practiced, even though your toes are still on the ground, there's still a lot going on. The other option, if you have a block and you want to try it, is to do the same thing, except you're bringing your toes onto a block and your heel towards the opposite leg. This is bringing a little more of an intense bend, like it's a little more bent, it's a little bit higher up, your heel's a little bit higher up on your leg, and there's more weight going into your standing leg. And again, you can choose the hand options that you want. Getting rid of those blocks. Another option is to start with your butt, toes on the ground, heel towards the opposite leg. And then an option, if you want to lift up that foot, put the sole of this foot onto the opposite calf. And then again, you can hold something, you can bring your hands together, you can bring your hands up, you see me shaking. And breathe here. There is one more option. To take the chair on the opposite side, bring all your weight into this foot, and then lean your shin against the side of the chair. I personally don't like this. I find it, maybe it's just my chairs are uncomfortable, but it's not very comfy. And I feel kind of rocky. So practice. Maybe you want to practice them all and then figure out which one you like. Maybe don't look at me while you're doing this because I'm moving. So maybe you want to focus on something that's still. I'm looking at like a picture frame above the monitor. Make sure you breathe while you do this. You can also come out at any time, like shake out that standing leg and then come back into it. So shake it out. After you've done it on one side, taking a few breaths, shake it out because we got to do the opposite side. So know that you don't have to do the same thing. You can choose a different variation on this one side. Oh, just noticed my dog has been chewing up this yoga block. Yeah, so maybe this time you want to use a block, maybe you didn't use it last time. And you want to, what am I doing? I mean, my chair's a little around. Is it? No, I feel like I'm all backwards. I'm using the same leg. Switch legs so you're balanced. Both sides, you're working both sides of your body. So maybe you want your tree to look like this on this side. Or maybe you're keeping your toes on the ground. Or maybe you want to go between toes on the block and foot on the calf. And then bring it down. There's also an option you might hear teachers say, like, once your foot's here, lift your foot up and bring it into the inner thigh. Yeah, there's absolutely no way my body would do that. So if yours does, awesome. You could lift up your foot and put it like right here. There's no way mine will go up that high. And also, I don't really know if there's a benefit to having it up that high. Like, I can't think of one. So find the variation that works for you and your body. And take a breath. And then we'll shake it out. Oof. Doesn't really feel like much at first, but then that standing leg for me starts to burn. I don't know about you. Okay. Perfect. Bumpy yoga mat problems. So let's take a moment, take a breath. We can come down to the ground, or you can also stay seated in the chair if that works for you. What am I going to have with you? I'm going to have blocks if you want them, a yoga strap. And when I come to sit on a pillow, so we'll just lift it a little bit off the ground. And come to sit in whatever way works for you. I mentioned this before, but I like to sit with my knees or my feet together, knees out to the side, but that's because it leaves me room for my belly. Might feel terrible in your hips, and if so, don't do it. Wherever you are, however you're seated, let's take a breath together. We've done a lot of standing movement. And you're feeling a little bit warm. Maybe we want to do a little bit of a twist. So taking one hand, bringing it to one side, taking the opposite hand, bringing it behind you. You could look over the front shoulder or the back. Taking a breath or two here. Maybe our heartbeat is slowly lowering a little bit if it was raised before. And then coming back to center. We'll do the same thing on the opposite side, twisting one way. Looking back or looking forward. Maybe you notice it feels tighter on one side versus the opposite side. And coming back to center. We're going to do tree again, but this time we're going to be sitting down. So I'm going to bring one leg out straight, and then we take the other leg, having it in towards the center like this. So it can be out with some space, or you can pull it right in towards your body. And let's sit here straight, breathing for a second. Maybe we want to raise our arms up towards the sky, if that works. If it doesn't work, we can leave them down and sort of twist our torso towards that leg. Our hands are up. We're going to turn our whole bodies and our arms towards that leg and slowly lower ourselves, our torsos down onto that leg. So bring your hand anywhere that feels good. Like it doesn't have to be near your foot, it could be on your thigh. If you have a chest like me, and maybe your arm feels like awkward here, I like to take my arm and tuck it underneath. And breathe here. Noticing how your lower back feels. Noticing how the side of your body feels. Noticing what you feel in the back line of your leg that's out. Or noticing what's happening in your hips. We're stretching a lot of different areas right now. And then we'll slowly come back up to seated. Taking a breath here. We'll bring the other leg out. Bring the other foot in. Coming into that tree pose on the opposite side. We'll take a breath. We'll raise our arms up towards the sky. Turning our torso and again leaning down forward onto that leg. Option to bring your hands closer to your foot or closer to your thigh, whatever works. And again, maybe you want to tuck that opposite arm. You either tuck it underneath your chest or you could go underneath your chin for like a little hug. You feel what's happening in your lower back. And maybe your hamstrings like right above the back of your thigh, like above your knee. And then we'll slowly come back up. Taking a breath. This time, maybe you want to bring both of your legs out in like a V shape. You can point your toes, flex your toes towards the ceiling, point them. You're seated, you could have your heels on the ground and then toes towards the sky and then point them. Maybe you want to use blocks here, bringing a block or two in front of you. You don't have to, but if you have blocks and want to, you're welcome to. We're going to hinge forward at the hips. Option to bring the arms up first, you don't have to. And then we're going to slowly fold forward. One thing that I find helpful when I fold forward is to really put my hands in between my belly and my legs and squish it in the middle as I hinge forward. I feel like I get stuck a little bit less. So sometimes when I don't do that, I feel like I get stuck here. My belly like hits the top of my thighs. But if I bring it in towards the center a little bit, I have a lot more space. You can also bring your hands really close to your body. You could have them on your legs, towards your feet, or you could have them higher up, or you could have them further out in front of you. This changes things. When you bring your hands further out, you feel more of a stretch maybe in your shoulders or your upper back, as well as your hips and underneath your legs. Breathe here. Maybe you want to look forward, or you want to look down to the ground. Breathing. And then we'll come back up, pushing ourselves back up, coming back up seated. This time, if you haven't been there before, come into that butterfly pose. So that's with your feet together, knees out to the side. And you could take a pillow, option to take a pillow and put it underneath your knees for support or blocks. Pillows are just more comfortable. And then again, an option to raise your hands up towards the sky, and we're going to fold forward. This time with my feet out or my knees out like this, I find I don't really need to push my belly in as much as I did when my legs are down. So maybe you notice the same thing, or maybe you want to lift up your belly this time as well, and that's totally fine. Whatever works. And we're going to slowly hinge forward. Thinking about your hands, or if your hands aren't up, your chest, being like the last thing to come down towards the ground. And breathe here. You could have your hands on your feet, you could have them on your legs, you could have them on the ground. If they're on your legs, notice that you could accidentally be pushing your hips open even further. So be mindful of that. Like maybe you want that, then awesome. But if you don't, careful. And we'll breathe here. Maybe thinking about what the difference is here in this position versus when your legs were out straight. You can also sit in this position when you're in a chair, bringing your feet together in the middle, knees out towards the side on the ground. And breathe here. And then we'll slowly come back up. Taking a breath here. We're going to come into deer pose, which is taking from here in this butterfly shape. We're going to take one foot. So we'll start with the right foot. I'm just going to move all of this stuff out of the way. And I'm going to take this foot, I'm going to bring it behind me. So I'm going to bend my knee and have my foot out behind me. This is also called, like in fitness, it's called like 90-90 position because we're supposed to have like 90 degrees. I don't have 90 degrees, and I don't think it matters. But this is 90-90 pose. And we're going to do a little forward fold in this. If you're in a chair, another option for this pose is instead of trying to do something like this, I mean, you could do legs in this direction or this direction, but you can also bring one foot up over the opposite leg if that works for you, because we're going to fold forward. So you could fold forward here over top of that leg. And you don't have to go very far, probably to feel a little sensation here. If you're on the ground and we're in this deer pose, notice if you're sitting up tall, I tend to like slowly fall over towards my front leg. Let's sit up tall. We'll take a breath. And then we have that option to hinge. So maybe you want to do the same thing with your belly, moving it a little bit away from this front thigh, like into the space between your two legs. And then we're going to hinge forward, bring your hands down towards the ground. So we're leaning over that front leg, the other leg sort of like out to the side and behind us. We're breathing here. Option, if you want, you could come down to your forearms. That might intensify the stretch. It's not really within my practice. I can get one arm down, but then my other arm, like the elbow doesn't come down to the ground all the way. So I don't have that mobility to be able to get both arms down. So what you could do, if you're like me, want to have them down, you could put blocks underneath them. Or you could have a block underneath one. Or you could just have your hands on the ground. Your choice. And breathe here. And then we'll slowly come back up to seated, sitting up tall. And we'll switch our feet. So we're going to bring our feet back, the opposite one in front, and then the other one behind. Sitting in that 90-90 position, or if you're in a chair, bringing one foot over the opposite thigh. Sitting tall, and just notice if you feel any difference in the side versus the other side. Like I feel personally like there's something going on in this left leg that was not going on in the right leg. And now let's fold. So option to take your belly, make space between it and that front leg, and then lower down, coming down towards the ground. And again, that option to go on your forearms if you want it. And you might notice I almost have the mobility to do it on this side. So things might be different on one side versus the opposite side. Like my elbow's a lot closer here. But it also doesn't really matter. As long as you find a version that works for you. Breathing. And then we'll slowly bring ourselves back up to seated. And we're going to come to recline. So we're going to come to lie down on the ground. I'm going to move my blocks out of the way. There's an option if you want to have a strap, you can have a strap beside you. Remove what were these chairs. So props. I'm going to grab a pillow for my head and then lower myself down to the ground. You're staying seated in the chair, that's totally fine. I won't breathe here for a second. So I've come into constructive rest. I think last time we talked about straight legs versus feet on the ground, knees towards the sky. You choose what feels better for you. I think I mentioned that me having straight legs feels terrible. And I think that that's because I have bigger butt, and that creates, when my legs are straight, it creates a much more of an arch in my spine, the lower part, like my lower back, and it is not comfortable. So I would rather be in constructive rest, which is this position. If you choose what version works for you, you could also stick a pillow or like a big pillow bolster or something, couch cushion underneath your knees if you want to have your legs straight. From here, let's take a breath. Maybe we want to think about lifting one leg up towards the sky and then lowering it back down. Doing the opposite leg. If you're in the chair, sitting, maybe think about slowly kicking your foot up in front of you and then doing the opposite. Here's where maybe you want to grab a strap. You want to bring one knee in towards your chest. You could hold it with a strap if you wanted to keep it there, or you could bring it in and out. And I also mentioned before that I like bringing my knee out to the side. So a lot of times you see people bringing their knees directly in towards your chest, and that just doesn't work for my body. Because I have a belly, it gets stuck. I bring it out to the side, I have a lot more mobility. So you could alternate, or you could bring one in at a time and hold it with your strap. You can also hold your hand underneath your knee. So you think about what works for you. You can also bring them both in. You can bring them both in holding with your strap. Or I like to link my feet, having my knees really wide. So I create like this like V shape with my shins and my feet. You can still use the strap if you want. You don't have to. And we can rock or give ourselves a little bit of a lower back massage. Breathing. Relaxing our body. If you have this strap here, you have an option of one more pose. So we can come into a variation of happy baby pose if you want. You don't have to. You stay rocking like this. Or if you want, you can bring the strap around your feet, widen your feet, and bend your knees, holding the strap up by your hands. So your choice. This is a variation of happy baby in rock again with your feet up towards the sky, giving that same lower back massage. And this is, I think, supposed to be like a happy baby, how babies hold their feet and rock and like play with their own feet. So this is a variation of that. So your choice if you want to rock and happy baby for a little bit, or if you want to rock with your feet together, knees out to the side or knees in towards the chest, your choice. With happy baby pose, you might feel a little bit more of a stretch in your hip. Doing a couple more wherever you're at. And then maybe you want to let that go. Put your strap to the side. And slowly come into this constructive rest position. So knees up towards the sky, feet on the ground. And we'll do some windshield wipers. So lowering our legs down to one side. Maybe thinking about pressing that top leg down towards the ground. And then we'll do the same on the opposite side, lowering the leg down towards the ground. And then up, legs up towards the center. Option to do that one more time. Breathing while you do this. And we're going to come into our final resting pose. So whatever you want that to be. That could be this, lying here in constructive rest. Or you could put a pillow underneath your knees. I think last time I talked about corpse pose, or Shavasana, which is having our legs out straight, our arms down by our sides. This feels horrible in my back. So if that's you, you don't have to stay there. The whole point of this position is to rest your body. And if it doesn't feel good, then it will be restful. So you could roll onto your side. You could roll onto your belly. You could sit up, whatever works. Spend a second getting comfortable in that position. Take a few breaths once you're there. Maybe you want to think about how your body's feeling physically. Maybe doing a little scan from head to toe. Has anything changed in your body? Has anything changed in the way you feel physically? What about your mind? Is there anything changed in your mind throughout this time? Is there anything that's changed in your thoughts? Maybe there hasn't been, and that's totally fine too. Just doing a little check-in, see what's different for you. Maybe focusing on your inhales and your exhales. How your body expands as you fill up with air, and how it gets lower, or maybe like contracts a little bit as you exhale. Inhaling, your body gets bigger, sturdier, and then as you exhale, maybe you feel your muscles melting into the ground or into whatever you're supported by. We're going to spend a couple minutes in silent practice. I'll be here to hold space and keep time, and I'll let you know when it's time to come out of this practice.
Maybe you want to come back to the body, coming back to the breath, feeling maybe the temperature of your room, the sensations of your body against your mat or against your props or wherever you're sitting or laying. Maybe if you're really relaxed, you want to stay there, and that's totally fine. This meeting will shut off and you can continue relaxing in your space. Or maybe you want to slowly come up to a seated position. There's no rush. You can slowly roll over and come up any way that you like. Wherever you are, maybe you want to take a couple breaths together. You can bring your hands to your heart or anywhere on the body or whatever works. Inhaling and exhaling through the nose or the mouth, whatever. I want to thank everyone so much for this practice. It means a lot that you're here. Maybe you want to send some gratitude to yourself. And I also want to send some gratitude to the leaders and lineages of yoga that came before and anyone whose knowledge contributed to us being able to have this practice here together today. So thank you everyone so much. I'll be here to answer any questions after I shut off the recording. And if not, I will see you next week.